Good morning. We made it to the weekend. How you doing? Let's get into the forecast. Across the country today, these are your hazards, your watches and warnings, and we have a system moving into the Pacific Northwest, so we're going to see some rain, especially for the Cascades of Oregon and Washington. We're looking at flood watches there, also red flag warnings in the Pacific Northwest all the way into Idaho and Nevada. You're included, parts of California near Yosemite for some stronger winds. We see another area of possible flooding today with some heavy rainfall here and there from Utah to northern Arizona. And then as we get further to the east under that dome of high pressure, it's going to be hot again and rather very hot. Heat advisories for much of Texas, all of Louisiana, Mississippi, almost most of that, Georgia, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, a little bit of Missouri thrown in, and that's excessive heat warning for a big chunk of that, especially along the Red River, Texas, Oklahoma. We'll show you some of those temperatures are rivaling Phoenix's temperatures for today, so kind of crazy. And there's some fog up there in North Dakota, a little bit of South Dakota. And another area of flooding concerns would be central Pennsylvania, some of the higher elevations there. And we still have those flood warnings for some of the rivers from Florida up to North Carolina and a little bit there of Missouri. Today's weather spotlight. Okay, Columbus, Ohio is where we're pulling this map from. And so near 90, Columbus to Dayton, low 90s, Cincinnati. And so one more hot day is what they're saying, and then afternoon thunderstorms, some possibly severe from south of Columbus down to just east of Cincinnati and that entire area in there. We'll show you that a little bit later here in our severe weather outlook. But Columbus, Ohio on the warm side today before a cool front cools them off tomorrow, and ahead of that front, a chance of severe weather. Here is that surface, and that does show the severe weather for southern Ohio, much of Kentucky. So Lexington, you're included, all the way down to Bowling Green, just north of, northern parts of Tennessee, I should say. So Nashville, you're not included, but just north of you. Heavy rainfall possible, Pennsylvania into Maryland. And so watch out for that bullseye for some of the heavier rain showers. Could see some heavy rain again, Utah and Arizona with some flooding possible there. Also some severe storms possible there. A little disturbance rotating around the low that's approaching the Pacific Northwest, which could have a few severe storms in the Cascades of Oregon and southern Washington. So Mount St. Helens down to the Sisters, it looks like. Further inland, eastern Oregon, parts of Nevada, a high fire danger. And then we see our scattered showers and storms across a lot of the country today, especially around that low in the Great Lakes and further east and south. Highs today still high. Here's what I was talking about. You look along the Red River between Oklahoma and Texas, and there's a 107. And that is Wichita Falls, I believe. And so that's hot. 103 for Dallas. And even a 106, I think that's Abilene area there. So, yeah, very hot in that area. I mean, 108 for Phoenix. So it rivals it. So the hot temperatures from the desert Southwest through the south central U.S. And then as you get further to the east, that cool front having an effect. So like low 90s for Georgia. And then further north, it gets into the 80s and even some 70s. Near 80, I would say, and some 70s for Maine. 70s really around the Great Lakes. So, especially Michigan, northern Indiana, northern Illinois, Wisconsin into Minnesota, and even parts of eastern Iowa, just barely into the 70s. And then, around that, it's 80s and then 90s when you get into Kansas. And also 90s for just east of the Rockies, the eastern plains of Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, still in the 90s, 99 for, is that Colorado Springs, I believe. I don't think that's far enough south for Pueblo quite. 98 for Denver. The valleys in the Snake River Valley in Idaho, still in the upper 90s to near 100. Even there's 101 is at Moscow, Idaho, I think, and 91 for Spokane. Cooler when you get, of course, west of the Cascades and some rain moving in. 80s to low 90s as you go through central California. So that's a temperature look across the country. Here's your surface for tomorrow. And our severe weather focus heads into the southeast out ahead of our cool front. So all the way from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and a little bit of Arkansas is where we could see those severe storms tomorrow. Heavy rainfall continues for parts of, the East Coast, all the way from Virginia, Washington, D.C. included in this, Delaware, parts of Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York City, and New York. So we'll be watching out for that. Pacific Northwest bringing some scattered showers, Oregon and Washington. Lows tomorrow morning on the warm side where the high pressure is, starting out in the 80s for portions of Texas, otherwise 70s. Some 80s also to start the day in the desert Southwest. A lot of 70s for the Southeast, and those translate into 60s as you get up into the Ohio Valley and parts of Michigan, the UP of Michigan, maybe even in the 60s for lows. Same with here in Iowa, 60s, 50s for South Dakota, North Dakota, at least in some places. And then you get into the Rockies, widespread 50s and even 40s for elevation. Same for Oregon and Northern California, Cascade Mountains, lows in the 40s, 45 for Eastern Oregon and Baker there, 50s to start the day in the Willamette Valley. And so nice and cool for parts of the west and hot under that high pressure and where there's more humidity in the southeast, south central, southeast. And those highs tomorrow reflect that as well. Still hot in Texas, 101 to 105, 106. I think that's 108 for Wichita Falls and for Phoenix, so about the same. The difference is Wichita Falls has more humidity, so kind of brutal. Same for Louisiana, still hot. And then temperatures drop off as you head further north, especially near that low, moving out of the Great Lakes towards New England. Those high temperatures do drop off and behind that cool front as it continues to sink a little further south and east. All right, 48-hour rain. I love this map. This is your expected rainfall for the next couple of days. And you can see the highlights that we talked about on the surface map for today, namely the Pacific Northwest, especially the Cascades and Olympic Mountains. Then we have more like monsoon type rain from northern Arizona into Utah. Some of that could be on the heavy side. We see a little bit of heavy rainfall or, some pretty decent accumulations of rain for parts of Arkansas and even down in along the Gulf Coast. But further north, closer to that low in the Great Lakes moving into New England, that's where the heaviest rain and our flood watches are: Pennsylvania, New York State, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Delaware. So that's really the main place to look out for. And then way down the southern tip of Florida, looks like the Florida Keys getting some heavy rainfall too. Looking ahead to Monday, starting your work week, that cool front sinks a little further south. So not as hot for parts of the southeast and a little bit cooler for parts of the Midwest and into the northern plains. But the biggest cool off will be up in New England and for the East Coast. And we see scattered showers and storms basically along that front. And that front becomes stationary up against the Rockies. And we see scattered showers and storms all across the northern Rockies and northern plains as well. Highs on Monday, just a quick look, still hot in Texas, 111 Phoenix, kind of the hot spot on this map. And you see more 80s in the southeast behind that cool front. And so it's not going to be cold by any means. Fronts are relative, but it's a cool front, so cooling things off for parts of the southeast, Tennessee, Kentucky, lots of 70s up there in the Ohio Valley, Indiana, Illinois. So rather pleasant, I would say. And then, back to the 80s and 90s as you head back into the west in the plains. Real quick, let's take a look at the European model today. And so we'll see what's happening here. This is this morning about our current temperature, our time. It's 9 o'clock right now here in Central Time. And so our low centered over Michigan, and we see already some showers around that this morning. And we're already seeing a little storm here popping up for parts of Ohio. As we get through the day today, this is our area of severe weather. Remember, Kentucky, Ohio. And we should see those storms start to pop. What's going on is with this low, it's you've got winds in the upper levels going like this, but you also have them going like this. And so when you have the winds spreading apart above your head, it has to be replaced by air from underneath it. And so that rising action causes the instability. So we should see some robust storms in this area today. And then some of those, of course, could be severe. And so that's the way that looks. And then as we go further into the day, the showers relaxing a little bit. This is tonight. Actually getting into tomorrow morning. So starting out the day with a few showers in this area, but this is where we're going to see the area get reactivated Sunday. And of course, down here in the southeast too, watch out for that. Pacific Northwest, some showers and storms moving in. But here we go. As we get into the day tomorrow, we start to see showers and storms, Pennsylvania, New York mainly, but even down into Maryland and Virginia, and a few on the southern side of this. Now, this is where we're going to watch for some more heavy rain and maybe some severe weather down in the southeast with that cool front. And then that cool front kind of clears, so some light rain behind it, but not too bad. And then when we get into the day on Monday, we see another area of showers and storms popping up and then moving offshore. And this is late in the evening on Monday, moving into, say, getting closer to midnight Monday night. There's not quite midnight. That's midnight, but you see a little disturbance here in the northern plains moving southward with some showers and thunderstorms, but not too aggressive here. So how do we look as we get into the 6 and 10 day forecast? And it's a little bit more of the same. I mean, we still have our high pressure centered over the southwest and the south central, bulging northward. So those high temperatures still, especially along the east side of the Rockies and moving into the plains a little bit. But your temperatures, your chances of above average temperatures dropping off as you head east. And then we get into cooler than average temperatures for the East Coast and also for the West Coast. And then as we head to our 6 and 10 day precipitation, chances of rain increasing for the Pacific Northwest with that system moving in into the northern Rockies and even the Four Corners area, the northern Four Corners area. Looks like above average precipitation for Florida and parts of the southeast up to the mid-Atlantic. And then drier than average as that low moves out of the Great Lakes and gets out of here. We're going to be left with drier than average temperatures centered around the Great Lakes into the Midwest and even down into parts of Texas. So that's a look at your forecast through the weekend into next week. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And of course, we'll keep you updated right here on the Weather Mic.